I want you to look at something right now. Your screen will do. Now keep looking at it and close one eye. You're seeing the same thing, but in a different way. It's called a monocular cue. So in essence, you just went from 3D to 2D, and your depth perception will be way off. But you're seeing the same thing, just from a different perspective. Same is true with the four Gospels. Four perspectives on the same truth. You can read each one and see the greatest story ever told from different vantage points. The teaching that we're going to cover this morning, you may have heard it if you have been following the Lord and reading the Bible for any period of time. It's going to be a familiar story to you, but I would guess that you remember it from Matthew's Gospel. We're going to look at it today from Luke's. Luke was known as the beloved physician. He also became a very detailed historian and author, and he will give us insight that Matthew's true and powerful perspective does not. Today's message is called, What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. Do what you can do. Open your Bibles today to Luke chapter 6. This teaching is embedded in and actually serves as the climax and conclusion of what many have called the greatest sermon ever preached, the Sermon on the Mount. So when a teaching is that pivotally positioned, it would do us well to really get dialed into it. Luke chapter 6, beginning in verse 43, where Jesus says, "For a good tree does not bear bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. For every tree is known by its own fruit. For men do not gather figs from thorns, nor do they gather grapes from a bramble bush. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil. For out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks. But why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do the things which I say? Whoever comes to me and hears my sayings and does them, I will show you whom he is like. He is like a man building a house who dug deep and laid the foundation on the rock. And when the flood rose and the stream beat vehemently against that house and could not shake it, for it was founded on the rock. But he who heard and did nothing is like a man who built a house on the earth without a foundation, against which the stream beat vehemently, and immediately it fell." That word, therefore, fell, could also be translated, it collapsed. And the ruin of that house was great. Jesus most often used agricultural metaphors. You know, the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed. The sower sows the word, but occasionally he used architectural metaphors, which means whatever he's alluding to is going to take a lot of work. It's one thing to plant a seed and watch it grow, and yes, there's a certain amount of work. There's the tilling of the ground and fertilizing, but building a building is a whole other level. It's going to take some sweat equity. You're going to have to get your hands dirty. Tenacity will be required to build something, because there will be obstacles, there will be setbacks, there will be unforeseen challenges. You could even come across a shady contractor, because when it comes to building, things rarely, if ever, go exactly according to plan. And if you're rebuilding anything, C.S. Lewis said this. He said, "You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending." If you're renovating, remodeling, rebuilding anything, whether it's a house or the organizational and financial health of a nonprofit or your life in general, you have to tear down before you can build up. You have to unlearn before you can relearn. There will be demolition. And demolition can be discouraging. Demolition can reveal things that you didn't even know were wrong. Things you didn't even know had to be fixed. You thought you were just replacing the tile, but when you did the demo, you found out that the floorboards need to be replaced. And then when you pulled up the plywood, guess what? There was a beam that was rotted out, so you have to replace the beam so that you could replace the subflooring so you could lay down that trendy gray wood look tile. But the demolition was necessary to remodel. Demolition is necessary to rebuild. And Ecclesiastes chapter 3 says it like this: there is a time to tear down and a time to build. So whether it's reconstruction or new construction, construction sites are messy. And since your life is under construction, it's messy. But the messiness is a good sign, because a clean construction site means nothing is happening, nothing is being built, there is no progress. You see, your mess indicates your progress. So if your finances are messy right now, if your emotions are messy, if your family is messy, if your marriage is a little messy right now, it's okay as long as you are committed to building. But most people don't want to build. They want to buy. But there are some things that money can't buy. The prophets, Lennon and McCartney, sung, "Can't buy me love." No, 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 no. You can't buy love. You can't buy friends. You can't buy respect. You can't buy honor. You can't buy character. You can't buy a life. You have to build one. Some people don't want to build a career, because building a career takes too long. It's years of hard work. Some people don't want to build a solid marriage. They want to be married, but are they willing to build? Thank God for the wedding. Thank God for the rings. Thank God for the honeymoon. But are the two of you willing to do the hard work of building a solid marriage that will actually stand the test of time? See, money can buy you a lifestyle facade, but it can't build a foundation for your life. For that, you have to dig. Now, everybody wants to work on the facade. Everybody wants to have curb appeal. Everybody wants to do the above ground work, because the above ground work is pretty. The above ground work is attractive. Look at the stonework. Look at the shutters are a nice touch. You know, those front doors, they're expensive. The lawn, the landscaping, they're pristine. Look at those pavers, the Belgian block curbing, and the wrought iron fence, the interior design. The above ground work may get you accolades and applause. It may get you oohs and ahs, but it doesn't matter what's going on above ground if there's all kinds of craziness going on beneath the ground. You have to be willing to work on things that people don't see. You see, the work goes down before it goes up. Let me say that again. The work goes down before it goes up. See, this is where Luke gives us the detail that Matthew didn't. In Matthew, the wise man built his house on the rock, but he didn't just go find a rock to build on. He didn't just find a slab and build a house. Luke lets us know that he had the same soil. He had the same sand as his neighbor. But the wise man dug down until he hit rock, and then, and only then, did he begin to build up. Work goes down before it goes up. But Jesus isn't really teaching us how to build a house. He's telling us how to build a life. And his concern is that people have a tendency to hear more than they do. Oh, people love to hear. People love to hear the word. But Jesus is saying hearing the word doesn't necessarily mean building the house. And yes, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Romans chapter 10 and verse 17. But listen, what good is faith if you're not gonna do anything? As we studied last Sunday, faith without action is empty, useless, and dead. Jesus is saying, I don't want you to just hear the word. I want you to do the word. I don't want you to just hear the word about healing. I want you to go and lay hands on somebody. I don't want you just to hear about wisdom. I want you to walk in wisdom. I don't want you just to hear that I'll meet all your need. I want you to go and sow seed. I want you to actively engage in the process of doing the word. And yes, doing the word is a process. It's not just mechanical application. It's not just robotic implementation. It's a process. And a process takes time, an evaluation, adjustment, improvement, growth, repeat. You see, Abraham doesn't become the father of faith until he fails to trust on more than one occasion. Jacob doesn't become Israel until the wrestling. Simon the fisherman doesn't become the apostle Peter until he deals with his denials. And Saul the persecutor doesn't become Paul the apostle until he's knocked down into the dirt and blinded so that he can see. My family, it's not just hearing the word. Nor is it just a cold, cursory, emotionless equation of doing the word. It is the process of doing the word. It's the struggle. It's the wrestling. It's the pulling. It's the stretching. It's the stumbling your way through it. It's the failing forward. It's bouncing back. Listen, it is in the aggravation that gives you foundation. And as you go to do it, you're learning things about God you never knew before. You're learning things about yourself that you never knew before. You find out that you have proclivities and propensities and potentialities that you never knew you had. And you're also finding out that you have problems, you have issues, you have blind spots, you have glitches that you never knew you had. You learn how to deal with obstacles and difficulties and setbacks as you break up the fallow ground. You learn how through faith and patience to inherit the promises. The Bible says you have need of endurance so that after you have done, not after you have heard, not after you've considered, not even after you've prayed, after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise. As you carry out what he tells you to do, all of a sudden you're going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. It's the process that gives you the power. It's the rejection and the alienation that drives you to your knees. It's the digging that makes you deeper. My family, before there's elevation, there must be a foundation. And before you can lay a foundation, there has to be excavation. When you do the word, you are like the man who's digging down to the rock. When you start doing what God tells you to do, there is an inevitable digging process where everything that isn't solid has to be excavated. Doing is digging. Digging past your fears, digging past your insecurities, digging past your learned behaviors, digging past your poor self-image, digging past your prejudice, digging past your self-imposed limitations, digging past your past, digging all the way down. And you gotta keep digging. God gave you a shovel. He gave you the soil. Listen to me. He's given you the promise. He's given you the power. Now you gotta dig because there's rock down there somewhere. You may not look strong. You may, in fact, look weak. You may not look courageous. You may not look immovable. You sometimes may be shaking. You may be nervous. You may feel intimidated. You may not come across as confident, but there is rock within you somewhere. Now listen, nobody ever says, oh, look at that beautiful cinder block. Oh, those are gorgeous concrete pilings. What a gorgeous poured footing. No one says that because they can't see it. The underground work must be done before exposure. Imagine the scenario out of Luke chapter 6. His neighbor across the street, he's building twice as fast as him because his neighbor just went up. He didn't dig down. He didn't dig it out. He didn't excavate. He just started building up. Now, there wasn't any difference in the soil. The difference was in the preparation. One built on the rock, one built on the sand, one built on the surface, and one dug down till he hit rock. So, you can build a solid house in a sandy place. What's around you doesn't have to be perfect. Your surroundings, your setting doesn't have to be all that solid because it's not about your circumstances. This is not a soil test. The sandy soil was not conducive for either to build upon. It's just that one man was willing to dig down and the other man was impatient. The other man wanted instant gratification. The other man wanted to look good without necessarily being good. And so he just started to build up. The man who built his house on the sand had the option of building on the rock. If he was going to put the discipline into digging down deep enough, somewhere beneath the sandy soil, there will always be rock. But most people don't have the discipline. They don't want to make the effort. They don't want to respond to the grace of God. They don't want to put forth corresponding actions to their faith. They don't want to do the work of the doer enough to deal with the sand, to deal with the removal of dirt, to get down to the rock. The problem's not the condition, it's the discipline. It's not the adversity, it's how you respond to the adversity. It's not the storm. It's whether or not you did the digging to prepare for the storm long before the storm arrived. One understood the power of foundation. The other didn't think it mattered. Doers of the word dig for the rock. Hearers of the word go for the promise without the preparation. But a doer of the word preps for the promise because you know that the promise is big enough, it is valuable enough to justify preparation so that when it appears, it won't disappear. Listen, there's no shortcut to change. There's no shortcut to transformation. There's no shortcut to reformation, and there is no shortcut to excellence. You can't fast track it. And in this instant age that we live in, we have lost the understanding of slow preparation. Listen, there are things you can't microwave. There are things you can't instant download. There are things you can't just click. You could put a cup of ramen noodles in the microwave. You might be able to reheat certain leftovers in a microwave, but you cannot broil a proper filet mignon. You can't make a paella. You can't cook a turkey with all the fixings in a microwave. A pot roast or a brisket is best cooked low and slow. Listen, some meals take a long time in the pressure cooker. Fast food versus slow food, I will take slow food every single time. In this instant, next day delivery, DoorDash, drive-through age, when you get into something that takes slow cooking, that takes stability, a long obedience in the same direction, you start to think that delay is denial. You think that something's wrong. It's never going to happen. The devil must be at work. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They'll mount up with wings like eagles. They'll run and not be weary. They'll walk and faint not. You're waiting on something. You've got some slow cooking to do. Listen to me. You've got to warm up to some things. You may have to dig deeper. You may have to go through some struggles. You may have to go through some heartache. You have need of endurance. Listen. But what you're working on cannot be instant. If it's instant, it ain't excellent. And if it's excellent, it won't be instant. What you're working on has to be able to stand through the storm. It's got to be able to stand against the wind. It's got to be able to stand in the hurricane. It's got to be able to stand when the wind and the waves beat upon it. When the enemy comes in like a flood, what God has called you to build has got to stand. When you get to the top of the hill, you got to be strong enough to stand. It's one thing to get something, it's another thing to keep it. And if you're gonna keep it, it'll have to be built on a firm foundation. And before there's a foundation, you have to dig. Before there's a foundation, there must be excavation. Excavation is the process where friends that weren't really your friends leave. Oh, they were your friends until you asked for help. Oh, they were friends till you needed something from them. They were friends of the good times. They were friends for what you brought to their table, which means they weren't really friends anyway. When you start digging is when they get excavated from your life. Excavation is where you come to the place where you cry out, dig it out, Lord. Dig it out, Lord. Dig out everything that's flaky. Dig out everything that is shaking. Dig out everything that is unreliable, everything I can't build upon. Let there be addition by subtraction. Dig out everything in me that can break, everything that is fragile, my fragile ego, my fragile self-image, my easily hurt feelings. Dig out everything in me that is debilitating, everything that imprisons, every bondage, every addiction, all my people pleasing, all my need for approval. Dig my fear out, dig my doubt out, dig my unbelief out, dig my anxieties out, dig my greed out, my selfish ambition, my self-absorption, my self-centeredness. Dig out my knee-jerk overreactions. Dig my depression out, dig my discouragement out, dig my stinking pride out. Dig out the memories of my past. Dig out what mean-spirited people have done to me. Dig out the neglect. Dig out the abuse. Dig out the negative words that have been spoken over my life. And here's why. Because the deeper you go, the higher you'll rise. Let me say that again. The deeper you go, the higher you'll rise. It's true with building a building, it's true with a skyscraper, and it is true with building your life. The work goes down before the building goes up. Now listen, no one may see the fancy doors yet. They may not see the stucco or the siding. They may not see the beautiful brickwork. They may not see the luxurious landscaping because you're digging for something. Just looks like there's a hole in your yard. But it's because you're digging. You can tell everybody, hey, check back with me in a minute. Check back with me next month. Take a look at what has been built after a year. Check out what is still standing after every storm. Check out the enduring beauty of what the master builder Jesus has built in and through my life a decade from now. Listen, your life might look a little shabby right now. Your life may look like it's under construction. There may be nothing but a backhoe and a hole. You may be up to your neck in nothing but dirt. But you're digging down to the rock. And when you hit rock, it is worth it. It's worth it to dig down. It's worth it to excavate. It's worth it to be vulnerable. It's worth it to uncover. It's worth it to be naked and not ashamed, because it's worth it to look bad for a little while if you're going to look good for a lifetime. It's better than looking good for a minute and coming down in an instant. It's worth it. It's worth it to engage in the process of doing. Because you learn in the struggle. You learn in the suffering. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Your strength tolerance is being fortified in the dirty digging and the difficult doing. Your pain tolerance increases. Your wisdom increases. Your emotional quotient is elevated. Your adversity quotient rises up. Your compassion increases. Your ability to deal with haters takes a quantum leap forward. The deeper you dig, the higher you rise. When you don't know what to do, be a doer. When you don't know what to do what you can do. Study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that needs not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Do what you can do. Go into your closet and pray to your Father. Shut the door. Pray to your Father who sees in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. Do what you can do. Listen to me. Intercede for one another. Care for one another. Love one another as I have loved you. I also tell you to love one another. Do what you can do. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Do what you can do. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Do what you can do. Speak for those who have no voice. Stand up and speak all the words of this life. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation for all who will believe. Listen to me. Turn the other cheek. Go the extra mile. Give the coat off of your back. Do what you can do. Dig down deep. And when everything that can be shaken is being shaken, and surreal is the new reality, when the storms of life take their best shot at you, you'll rise to the occasion by the grace and for the glory of God. You'll have overwhelming victory, and you and your house will still be standing stronger than ever on the other side.